Welcome to Aquarian Radio at aquarianradio.com. I am your host, Janet Kerr Lesson, with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Lesson, and this is an episode of Enki Speaks, a part of the Aquarian Radio Network. Today's episode is called Alexander Won the Eastern Mediterranean, Egypt, and India to the Ganges, and the short title is Alexander the Great Killer. As Dr. Lesson starts Alexander's tale, I suggest you we have this webpage that we will have on aquarianradio.com. It's a long title on Enki Speaks, but it basically is the episode Alexander Won the Eastern Mediterranean, Egypt, to India, to the Ganges, and it's an article on enkispeaks.com. And we urge you to look at the pictures that Sasha has assembled on this website as you listen along to the program. So go to enkispeaks.com and look for the posting for this episode. The gods of Greece are the same ETs from Nibiru who had run us Earthlings from our get-go. They made us from their genome to serve us. They and those they left in charge of this planet continue to instigate wars of Earthlings against each other as proxies for their own incessant rivalries. Most of the Nibirans who came here to run the Nibiran gold mining project left Earth between 2025 and 650 BCE, after Enlil, Yahweh's enforcers, nuked those of Marduk-Ra. They left Marduk as Earth's top god, and Greeks called Marduk Zeus.
Let's look at Persia in 539 BCE. Cyrus of Persia has conquered Babylon, Marduk's city. Cyrus' successor, Cambyses, goes on to conquer Sumer, Mari, Mitanni, Hatti, Elam, Assyria, Egypt. So he's got this huge Persian empire. In 522, Darius murders Cambyses, and then he rules the extended Persian Empire. Meanwhile, in Greece, Philip II has got lots of gold from gold mines in Macedonia. With this gold, he outfits his infantry and his cavalry, and with them, he unites Greece. Philip had Aristotle tutor his legal son, Alexander. He's the biological son, however. Alexander is not Philip's biological son. Alexander's mother, whose name is Olympias, and she isn't a pure Macedonian. She comes from nearby kingdom of Epirus. But she says quite plainly that the Anunnaki god Marduk, who is known in Greece as Zeus, is the biological father of Alexander. And Philip is even supposed to have seen them copulating through a keyhole. So, Alexander sparked the Macedonian win in a great battle that his father was running against the other Greek states at a place called Chaeronea. At Chaeronea, Alexander's cavalry made a circle around the Thebans, and these Thebans were like male-male lover pairs that fought back-to-back with each other to the death. They wouldn't retreat. And so now, Philip controlled most of Greece.
One of Philip's bodyguards, whom Olympias and Alexander had suborned, killed Philip before Philip's new son, that he made with a pure Macedonian woman named Cleopatra, not the Cleopatra, but another Cleopatra, before this son could displace Alexander. Philip was assassinated. Alexander's man killed Philip's top general as he pursued the bodyguard. Olympias killed Cleopatra's son, and then Cleopatra killed herself. Alexander took Macedonia's throne. He held Delphi's oracle priestess at his sword point and asked, "Am I Zeus's son?" And she, much to under duress, confirmed him as the son of Zeus, which was the Greek name for Marduk-Ra.
So, reaffirmed as Marduk's son, Alexander attacked Persia. In 334, he took 32,000 infantry, 5,100 cavalry. And while Darius and the Persian army was often quelling a rebellion in Egypt, Alexander's army rode across the Dardanelles to Abydos in Turkey. The infantry formed lines. When he stretched his infantry out, the Macedonian infantry stretched for miles, and it faced enemies with a phalanx of 18-foot pikes that stuck out in front. You got to see it on the site. Alexander then would lead a cavalry charge, and that was the end of whoever was fighting him. First of all, at Granicus, even Greek mercenaries couldn't do anything against this amazing phalanx of pikes. At Gordium, Alexander hacked with his sword on this knot. King Midas had this ox cart that he had come to the area with, the gateway to Asia, as it were, and it had a knot that was real. And the idea was that anyone that could untie it would be able to rule Asia, but nobody could untie it. It was such a complex knot. Well, Alexander just took out his sword and he starts hacking away. Finally, got the outer cords to break, and then he just used his hands and unwound it. So he made a big deal. He was a propagandist. He was going to rule Egypt, and he showed it.
The Macedonians invaded northern Syria and left their wounded in a base at Issus, and then marched south to engage the Persians. But Darius took Issus and cut Alexander's army off from its supply line to Greece. Darius took the Persians over a mountain pass and killed all Greek wounded in Issus. The Macedonians returned to Issus. Alexander led his cavalry and defeated Darius's army. Darius fled to Babylonia. He left Syria, Palestine, and Egypt open for conquest by Alexander. The Macedonians took the landing platform at Baalbek. Alexander renamed it Heliopolis. He tore the Greek city of Ephesus from the Persians, then defeated Darius at Issos. Alexander then took Sidon and Aleppo. So in 332 BCE, he conquered Syria.
In Phoenicia, after a 7-month siege, the Greeks took the main Persian naval base at Tyre. And here's how he won. Tyre's leaders had killed the emissaries that Alexander had sent to ask for peaceful surrender, and so Alexander was enraged. He made his men, under constant arrow fire from little ships from Tyre, build a causeway. He called it a mole, and he built going from this island, this protective island in front of the harbor, to Tyre itself. And on this causeway, he had his men build these siege towers, and there were like these tents they could get under so the arrows wouldn't hit them. And, Tyre then just sent a great big ship loaded with naphtha, and it blew it up. The naphtha was strapped to the sides of the ship, and they ran it into the causeway, and it broke it. It killed all the men that were building and defending the causeway. Well, the Macedonians didn't give up. They built a second causeway and brought warships, big ones, from Cyprus. Now, the second causeway did connect to Tyre finally, and the Macedonian infantry then attacked Tyre from the north. Alexander led forces down gangways from the ships and then through a gap in Tyre's wall. When Tyre did fall, the Greeks controlled all of the eastern Mediterranean. They killed 8,000 Tyrians. They sold 30,000 into slavery.
Alexander reached Babylon in 331 BCE and rushed to the Ziggurat temple to grasp the hands of Marduk, as conquerors before him had. But Alexander saw Marduk's corpse preserved in oils in his ziggurat. Alexander won Egypt in 331 BCE, and he founded there the city of Alexandria. Alexander abruptly left his troops and trekked a week over the desert to Siwa Oasis. There he commuted in what he thought was a private audience with the gold statue of Marduk. Alexander asked Marduk's statue, "Am I Zeus's son?" The temple priest from a hidden chamber behind the statue confirmed Alexander as the son of Ra-Amun, also known as Marduk.
Yeah, and it may well be that this priest thought he was channeling Marduk too, which is something that priests were able to do, said they were able to do. In 331 BC, in Iraq, at Gargamella, Darius's army had added these great big long blades to the wheels of their chariots, and now these great big blade-wielded chariots just went rolling right at positions where it looked like Alexander had his army sort of massed for something big. But these were just luring position that Alexander had deliberately put on his flanks. Okay, so this is the infantry. So when Darius's army is then going to the left and right to get these concentrations, they leave this gap in the middle, and there comes Alexander leading the light cavalry, as he always did. The gap that these guys created, they took the bait of the massed Greek infantry flanks that were exposed and let Alexander get in. The Greeks then killed 300,000 Persians, and they only lost 1,000 men. Alexander then proclaimed himself, "I'm king of Asia," and he marched to the Persian capital, Susa. Susa surrendered without even fighting. Alexander then took from the Persian Empire Persepolis, Bactria, Sagiana, Cryopolis. From Persepolis, Alexander sent the gold home to Macedonia. He became the richest man in the world. He let his troops rob, murder the men, rape the women. Alexander got drunk, and he and his drunk generals led the Greeks as they burned Darius's beautiful palace. Alexander kept tracing Darius. He wanted him alive so that he could pass on the position of God and King of Persia. And so after a while, Darius's generals speared Darius and just left him in the trail. But Alexander found him as he was dying. Alexander promised the dying Darius, "Look, I'll really take good care of your mother and your kin." And in return, before he died, Darius abdicated as god and king, and he gave those jobs to Alexander.
In 329 BCE, Alexander conquered Scythia. But Macedonian soldiers, away some 7 years from Greece, began agitating to return home. Alexander purged his top general and others whom he suspected of agitation. He made his lover, Hephaestion, co-commander of the army. In 329 BCE, Alexander married the captive princess Roxanne. Alexander now ordered people to bow to him as a god. He created a huge harem of beautiful women and enjoyed a new one each night. He killed his historian for criticizing his hedonism, his Persianization. In 327 BCE, the Macedonians invaded India. After the Hydaspes River battle in 326 BCE, Indian King Porus charged Alexander's forces with elephants. Alexander himself almost died before his troops of wounds. The troops saw he lacked the invincibility he claimed that he, as a god, possessed. Alexander on, Alexander on elephant. He had an elephant too.
Yeah, he wound up putting elephants into his cavalry too.
And Alexander's generals refused to continue with the invasion of the Indian subcontinent, so Alexander turned back to Asia Minor. He planned to cross the Ganges for more conquests, but his troops mutinied, and they wouldn't go any further. So Alexander...
You know what that is, honey, that you keep reading? Those are the captions from that I didn't take out from pictures.
Okay, so ignore those.
So his men mutinied. They weren't going to go any further. And Alexander wasn't acting, as far as they were concerned, like a Macedonian anymore. He was acting like an effete Persian who thought he was a god, and he was really isolated. So Alexander knew they wouldn't go any further, and he just laid in bed there, and he was on a big depressive downer for a while. But after a while, he divided his army in half and sent half back to Susa, and he took by sea. He took the other half of his men to this awful desert. Lots of them died. He reached Susa in 324 BCE, and when he got back there, he kept his promise to Darius. he married all his senior officers to the noble Persian women. So, however, in 324 BC, an assassin, probably it was an assassin, poisoned his second-in-command, his lover, Hephaestion. Alexander was beside himself. First he hung Hephaestion's doctor, of course, but then he was deeply depressed, sort of like he gave up on life at that point. In 323, back in Babylon, Alexander was starting to die too. It was either disease or poison, but before he died, they asked him, "To whom do you will your empire?" He said, "To the strongest." Alexander's erstwhile buddy, Cassander, killed Alexander's wife and mother back in Macedon, and Cassander now named himself king of Macedonia. Ptolemy took Alexander's corpse to Egypt, and there started the Ptolemaic dynasty.
Wow. You have in 324 Hephaestion died, and it must be in 324 Alexander started to die of disease or poison.
No, it goes the other way when you're going down toward
towards
320.
Zero. That's right. We're going towards zero.
It goes a different way.
Sorry, you go backwards in time. Yes. Okay. I'm sorry. I screwed up. Anyway, well, that's all for today's show. Thank you for clarifying that in my brain there. And anything else you want to add? So was Alexander Marduk's son? So it looks like.
He's definitely thought he was. And he thought three things. He evidently asked the oracle three things. He said, "Have all my father's murderers been brought to justice?" He wanted to know if the gods were going to punish him because he was really behind the murder of Philip. So that was the one question he asked. And the oracle, or the priest hiding behind the statue, said, "Yes, it's all taken care of." And the second question he asked, "Will I conquer beyond what my father did? Will I do better than Philip in terms of conquest?" And the oracle said, "Yeah." And finally he asked, if he was divine, which he took to mean invincible and immortal. And so he went around, and he always led the charges. He would come back from a charge all like a pincushion. Most of it didn't penetrate, but he got hit a lot. So in this time when he really lost fallibility is when he's fighting Poro on the river. He led this charge, and he led his men so great that he was the second one to jump over the wall, and when he looked behind him, there wasn't any Macedonians. They couldn't even get up there. He had taken the ladder and gone up, and he was the only one that invaded, but he didn't stop there or go back with his men. He jumped inside this fort. It's called the Fort of Mari, and he started fighting himself, and a couple of other Macedonians came up, and there was four of them, and they were all dead except Alexander. By then, finally, his other Macedonians got in there, and when they came, they saw this huge heap of bodies, and Alexander was chopping away. But he got really badly hurt, and he almost died, and they decided, you know what, this guy ain't invincible. He thought he was, but he ain't.
That's an amazing story. And so, but he was a demigod because he was half Anunnaki, and we don't know if his mother was, what part Anunnaki she was.
No, but you look at her picture. She's a great, big, muscular woman.
Yeah, so she was probably an Anunnaki. So he probably was mostly Anunnaki. And then Marduk is Zeus, and also known as Ra. And so he was killed at some point. It's actually in the Bible. I'll have to get that excerpt. He was killed, but he was in laying in stasis in what was like a glass cavern with oils and preserved. We know that the Anunnaki can revive their dead, and so we don't think Marduk stayed dead. He was dead, but we don't think he stayed dead because Daddy Enki certainly would not allow his child to remain dead. So Enki had the ability to revive the dead. Anything else we need to add?
I think that's all for now. Look at this bigger thing. The people put the word great on horrible monsters who kill millions of people like Alexander and Genghis Khan and George Bush, and it's just not right.
No, just because you're great doesn't mean you're moral or a nice person. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us in today's episode. And you can hear more or listen to our archives at aquarianradio.com, AQUARIAN radio.com. And learn more about the so-called gods who motivated all these terrible massacres of the past and create the ongoing wars in the present at EnkiSpeaks.com.
They don't create the wars at Enki Speaks, but that's where you can hear about it.
We can hear about it, learn more. The website, EnkiSpeaks.com, but we're not going to have wars there. We're advocates of peace and breaking the God spell, which is just these Anunnaki gods who created all these. Well, the Anunnaki gods taught us how to war. We were very good students, and we war to this day, and there is a way to stop this, and that's what Dr. Les and I are dedicated to, peace and creating a real peace, one that honors all consciousness, all life, respects individuals, gives us our basic needs, etc., etc. And the website is EnkiSpeaks.com, EnkiSpeaks.com. And what else did you want to say?
Amen and women.
Oh, and our books are Anunnaki Gods No More and Anunnaki Legacy of the Gods. Anunnaki Dance of the Soul book one is Pierce the Veil. It's a 3-part series. And these are available on our websites, aquarianradio.com and EnkiSpeaks.com and on Amazon.com. So thank you. Much love. Blessings. Aloha from Janet Care Lesson and
Dr. Sasha Lesson.